Yo, what's going on YouTube? Schmeck here. I kind of wanted to give you guys an update with season 10 coming so soon. This is the night before, and we're probably going to have a ton of new changes coming about. And we also have new Endgame PvE coming out too. So I kind of wanted to give you guys a little bit of just an approach from my side for how you can prepare. There's a few resources here that you guys can see, as well as some suggestions for the endgame content that you're going to be running, mainly falling into line with Catacombs, the new raid Isle of Night, and potentially Hog, and of course M3s. So we're just going to get right into it. This is going to be a little quick and dirty. There's a ton of information we still don't have about what's going to be coming up. And this is going to be a little bit of an intro so that you guys can be better prepared for all the stuff that you're going to want to do in season 10. So, starting off right here, I'm going to have a spreadsheet here and I'll link the whole thing to you guys down in the description below, okay? There are a few different channels that I think are great for you guys to check out, just websites so that you can familiarize yourself with some of the kind of complexities or basic information about the game. But this is a guy named Ayub who normally runs on Nisa, and I think he made a character on Valhalla recently too. But he has a ton of tools for you here. So you guys can go over, you can check out tools, armor weight calculators, caps, enemy weaknesses, all this stuff. Bunch of like really good information for you all to use, as well as guides. And I'm sure that he'll be updating a lot of this for season 10 as well. Even Catacombs, right? Some coming soon information. Next thing that you're going to have is New World Database. New World Database is very basic info. It really just contains basic knowledge about items in the game. So, simple database, right? But you can really look up anything you want in game here, any item, and you can kind of see what people are looking at on the popular item tab, which is really cool. Old Crown is obviously going to be really sick in season 10, but you can see where to get it. You can see what set it's from, the perks that it has, crafting recipes, upgrade recipes, just free information for you guys, right? Last one that we have here is New World Buddy. And New World Buddy is going to be a little bit more data intensive. This is going to have all of the information that you're really looking for if you want to get down into the nitty gritty. So if you look at something like Old Crown, right, you can kind of see a lot more information that Old Crown has here. If we click on it as well here, you can see stuff like Royal. Well, what is Royal exactly? You can see all the information that it has. If you want to look up something specific like a debuff, you can look up Armor Breaker, which is just a hammer ability that does rend, right? But if you go to Armor Breaker, again, you can just get all of this information. Does it penetrate armor? How long does the rend last? All that good stuff. Really cool. If you aren't familiar with New World Buddy, definitely check it out. A lot of really sick information here. There's one other thing that I want to show you guys too, and this is kind of with anything like PvE related, but let's say you want to run the mutation depths this week. You can get a lot of information here by coming to the depths tab. And if you go to something like bosses, and I have this all in the spreadsheet later to make it really easy for you guys, you can basically see exactly what the boss is, right? The mob type being corrupted, armor rating, damage mitigation, what they're weak to, all that good stuff. You can even see their attacks, the damage they do, and what type they are. So really cool. All three of these resources are stuff that you guys should be utilizing in the new season. Here's just like a very basic buff debuff breakdown. You can kind of read through this, but these are really important for you guys to know if you want to get into endgame PvE. Rend just reduces a target's armor rating, so you do more damage to them. Weaken is the exact opposite. If you apply Weaken to a mob, it just makes it so that they do less damage to you. Empower is a self buff. You can also apply it to your group, and it lets your group and you do more damage. This Empower caps at 50%. Fortify is another another buff that can be applied to yourself or your group, and it just increases your armor rating, so you'll take less damage. Absorption is kind of one of the best ways to decrease incoming damage, and you will see that we have kind of suggestions for always changing this. And this is mainly because absorption coming through gems. So what you slot in your armor can be very, very important so that you take less damage and you make the content way easier. If you get into endgame PvE, swapping gems up to optimize your absorption is going to be one of the most important things so that you can be successful in the content. The last thing I really wanted to mention is that the game has hidden buffs to certain mobs, and these are normally like bosses, and you're going to be running into this, right? But the game doesn't tell you this exists, right? And again, this is like where something like New World Buddy comes to help because it gives you this information that the game doesn't, which is why it's so good. But in a nutshell, what resilience is, which is this buff that most bosses have, you're going to run into this in Isle. You're probably going to run into this in Catacombs, and you're going to run into it for M3 bosses. But if these guys have resiliences, this basically means that the rend and weaken you do are going to be cut into a percentage of their original value. So here we can see that, Echidna is the first boss in Hive of Gorgons, and he has a rend resilience of 50. This just means that whatever rend you apply to him is cut in half. All right. So another way of thinking about this is you need to do 140% rend in order to hit rend cap. So this changes the way you might approach the fight, right? Because if you want to apply 140% rend, you kind of need to think about how you're going to get there. Same thing with weaken, right? Weaken, if it has a debuff resilience of 66, this means that the weaken you apply is going to be cut into a third. So if you normally need to apply 50% weaken to hit cap, now you need to apply 150% in a sense. Again, why is this important? Well, you guys need to be thinking about how you're applying weaken within your 5-man group, your 10-man group, your 20-man group, so that if you keep the bosses weaken capped, they're going to do the least amount of damage possible to you, making the raid that much easier. And again, just think about how you're going to get there, right? We will probably get into a little bit more detail, and I probably will update this sheet with the ways I would get there for both rend and weaken. But again, season 10, so much new information coming out. So we're going to get there when we get there, and we will just be updating the spreadsheet when we have more information on all that good stuff. Next tab we have here is just for Catacombs, right? Obviously, Catacombs is going to have maybe a unique comp, maybe not. The first thing I wanted to say for you guys, right, is that we're lacking a lot of information on Catacombs for power ups and debuff resilience right now. The other thing I wanted to say to you guys is that Catacombs is going to have scaling difficulty, right? So, what this means is that if you just care about getting to the first few bosses and having fun, then this page isn't really for you. If you want to get to bosses 5 and 6, and maybe even the fourth one, depending on how difficult the content is, you're really probably, if it's actually difficult, you're going to need to put in a little time and effort and run a very specific composition. And if you want to be successful, now this does depend on the power ups and aspects, right? But again, let's look at the type of comp I'm suggesting, right? And again, this is considering the rend resilience over here that we previously mentioned. If we use a tank with Sword Shield Power Stone, Skewer Spear with Inferno, and a Void Gauntlet with Life Staff, here are all the different ways that we can apply weakens and rends. And then here are the totals that we will get and the cap right below it, right? So you can see that with this type of a setup, we're getting very near cap. And again, with aspects or power ups, if they do things like give us empower, weaken, and rend, then we could actually be easily hitting cap. Now, why does this matter? Well, this matters because if you need to hit cap like this in order to complete the content, this doesn't really leave a lot of room for thinking about possible build options. You're going to be very limited with what you can run if your goal is to beat bosses 5 and 6, but we still need a little bit more information on this for the time being. So again, the easiest, safest comp I'm going to give you guys right now is just your tank with Short Steel Power Stone. And again, this is bosses only. For mob sections or small areas, you probably want to move fast and you might run different things or have fun with it as you see fit, right? And yeah, your DPS will be a Skewer Spear. And then, of course, you'll have a Void Gauntlet Lifestaff player who's main handing Void Gauntlet mainly for Void Blade and then off handing those sweet, juicy AoE heals that we love to get. Next thing I have here for you guys is a raid setup. And the way this is basically going to work is I have a role for you, weapons, armor artifact you'd like to use, and then over here I kind of just have a skill tree set up specifically for raids that I would suggest, right? So if you're looking for skill trees for kind of 10-man content, this is what I would suggest. Um, the biggest thing that I want to say here, right, is that we have like four very, very important roles, and I don't want to get into too much right now because we'll probably do it in another video. But those four roles are basically these things that you see here, right? If you have a skewer spear main hand, a void blader, and then a flail main hand is going to be kind of a new build, okay? But what flail really does to the group, and you can see this in the skill tree and as well as if you just understand the build, but you're basically going to be giving your group 20% empower, 50% fortify, additional base damage reduction, and you're going to be constantly extending dots and debilitating debuffs like rend and weaken. On top of all that, you're going to be giving your group constant passive heals through the left side capstone and vortex. So flail is fucking insane. I think flail main hand is a mandatory build for all raids, no matter how you slice it. It's just insanely good. Skewer spear is mainly going to be there because it applies so much weaken, and you want that weaken constantly applied to make the content really easy, right? The other thing that's really important is a Void Blader, and you'll see here that for this beginner comp that I have, I actually have included a main hand life staff that will just be basically constantly pumping heals onto the group. And the reason that I've done that is because while I normally would never suggest this because I just don't think that it's ever needed, and the way the game is designed, it doesn't really ever incentivize a player dedicated to life staff. I realize that there are people out there that don't want to void blade on life staff, right? Maybe you run in a company or you have friends that you run with and there's a healer and they want to play their game their own way, right? And regardless of my opinion on that, the main point here is that no matter what, you're going to want someone permanently void blading on top of making sure you have essence rupture up so that you're going to be healing through damage. You will also be providing passive heals to your group. You'll be doing rend, weaken, and you'll be putting down oblivion for a 15% empower. We've also been leaked something, not leaked because it was in the patch notes by the devs, but right now it looks like the oblivion perk on weapon is also extending debilitating debuffs, very similar to that eruption ability on flail, by 30% if it's on weapon. So if it's on weapon, this means that if nullifying oblivion actually does this, if it extends debilitating debuffs, then you're 100% going to want a void blader because you're going to want nullifying oblivion down as much as possible. And of course, 15% in power for your entire group. So the main reason I brought this up here is because it's very common for us to see life staff players offhanding a void gauntlet. But again, if you're running with a life staff player that for whatever reason doesn't like doing void blade, just make sure you have someone in the comp dedicated to that weapon. On top of that, we have our sword and shield, and then we really just have our a sword and shield DPS, sorry. And this is just because of power, debuff extension, all that good stuff. This is probably a role that some groups would consider mandatory, but I don't think that it is. I think it's optimal to run this build, but if you didn't want to run it, you don't have to. We also have our flail main hand down here, and if you ever wanted to run another life staff in your group, I think that flail main hand is a very strong um, class to have your offhand life staff on. Given that you see like the skill tree I have kind of suggested, this is for the healer main hand, sorry. Let's go to the healer that is using an offhand. This is kind of the skill tree that I have suggested, right? So what you can see here is that Orb of Protection and Beacon and Sacred Ground are all very AoE abilities. This means that once you put these down, there's not really a point in staying on your life staff at that point, right? So the point being here is if you ever really wanted another life staff, you can just run that here. Just have your, be on flail the entire time. And then if you ever not need to drop a heal, drop your heal, go back to flail. Easy. And then we kind of have our intermediate comp over here, which is really just condense the healer role. Bada boom, bada bing. That's really about it. Nothing crazy. So healer role's a little bit more condensed. We have people doing more unique roles, but nothing too wild. And then, of course, for our expert comp, which is going to be developed a little bit, this is going to be centered a lot more around dot and debuff extension. And you can do this through things like One with the Shield, which is a sword and shield passive. Of course, the new Nullifying Oblivion and Smite. This just means that once you apply any form of a debuff onto a boss when you're fighting it, you can almost extend that buff permanently, or the debuff permanently, sorry. So let's say you do something like you do in Armor Breaker, 30% Ren for 10 seconds. Well, with all of the combinations we have with the utility from the group, 1 with shields on spear, or on the sword and shield, sorry. We have our flail main hand using eruption to extend debuffs. And now we have our nullifying oblivion on our void gauntlet player to extend debuffs. That will allow us to basically keep that armor breaker rend on permanently. Insane. So we're going to update this. I don't really want to lock into this expert comp right now at all. Even these builds over here, you can see we have a lot of Inferno offhands. This is really just meant as a placeholder for you guys, just to have kind of an idea of what you want to set up as you get into the new raids, right? This entire expert comp over here, don't go too crazy on it. You can see I've left 2 flex DPS open so that people can try out new builds, see what's the best for the new content that we're doing. Bada boom, bada bing. And yeah, I think that's really about it. Again, all the skill trees are over here. If you want to click on them, there'll be a direct link to New World Database so that you can see it. And I'm just going to update these basically as we get more information, as we do more testing. All of this will be updated, and then you guys can see my line of thinking and use it as a resource for yourself. The last thing that I have for you guys, and this is probably what I'm most proud of, but also this is what I've most known for and what I've invested the most time in, right? And that's just M3s. I've always loved the M3 system. I love the M3 expedition system. I think it's freaking awesome. Now, these 3 that we have here, I have a tank, skewer spear, and healer section, right? I'm going to leave the other 2 DPS roles blank for right now. I will update them at some point, but right now, I have no clue what those are going to be. So we're going to leave them blank. I think that there's a lot of things that could change. But the reason that I made this, right, is that there are a lot of mob sections and bosses. And again, like we said before, a lot of endgame PvE requires you to constantly swap up your armor so that you can be in the best situation, resistance-wise, with gems, so that you can take the least amount of damage during a fight and be more successful, right? So I created this so that you guys can basically see how you should prepare for M3s. I have New World Buddy links for everything that you see in blue here. So if you're interested in like the Dynasty Shipyard as a whole, you can just click it and it'll bring you right here. Super easy. As well as bosses, same concept, right? Touch the cam so it doesn't turn off. Still looking good. Nice. You know, you can go right here. You can basically see the Isabella that you might fight in Tempest. If we go over here, you can see the Zhao Taiyang, who is the final boss in Dynasty, right? Easy money. And you can see that the attacks that she does. So any link here is going to bring you exactly to New World Buddy so you can get even more information. And then, of course, you can see how I tell you to gem. So for Garden of Genesis, right, let's say you're going up against the first boss, which is Alluvium Marl. You can tell that he's mob type, or he's an Angry Earth. The best weapon, if you're a Skewer Spear player, weapon gem is to use Ruby. This might change, actually. Ignore this for now. I might need to change this. We lose a lot of stats, so it might just be best to run 350 decks all the time, but ignore it for right now. This is the resistances you can run or how you can gem, which is 35 strike and 18% nature. Again, if Genesis was like a fire mutation this week, you would be running probably a fire amulet with 8 rubies in your armor, right? But if you're fighting against the boss and you want to be gemmed appropriately, you would want to do something like 35 strike and 18% nature. So you can kind of see how this concept is applied to basically everything. Normally, spear players are always deciding between sweep and cyclone. So you can see what I suggest, right? You could run either or. And then maybe for a boss like Grundagold, which is the final boss in Starstone, I'm going to suggest that you run cyclone, right? So this is kind of a very basic overview. If you want to know how you should gem, my suggestions for abilities you should run, the optimal weapon gem that you should have in your spear, and of course, mob types and all that other nonsense. You can see all of that here. I've also done a full breakdown for tanking, right? So you can kind of see if you should be running Blood Drinker, main hand and offhand, how much con you should run, if you're in light or heavy, if conditioning is any good. And the same exact concept applies for tanking, right? And then, of course, we've done the same thing for healer over here. So again, the main reason I made this is because I want to really put out there that gemming appropriately is very important, right? And if you use this resource, you can kind of get all the information you need so that you're gemming appropriately. You have the best weapon gems in your weapon to do as much damage as possible. You know what mob type you're fighting against. And again, you have New World Buddy links to any and every boss fight in the game at the tip of your fingers. So I hope this is helpful. And I think that's going to call it. This video went a little longer than I wanted to, but you guys know I like the app, so it is what it is. We'll make the camera look a little bit nicer right here. Hopefully I get a new one soon. We'll see what happens. We will be doing a big stream tomorrow. And again, if you want to check out the spreadsheet to this video, it's going to be in the link below. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions for me, let me know. Check out the Discord. We'll be posting resources like this all the time. And again, I'm going to be updating this constantly. So if you ever have questions about anything, if there's ever something you think that's wrong, if you want to cook up a new build, join me in the Discord. Let's do it together. And thank you again for watching, and I hope this helps. Be late. See you in Season 10. Nighthaven. Go crazy.